Anyway, let's move on because we've spoken a lot about Liverpool so far.
Not enough.
Not enough. Well, we'll talk about Liverpool Man City in a bit. But we've got to talk about a man who faced them in midweek, who's been making some headlines, and that is Jude Bellingham. Didn't have the best performance in Real Madrid's 2-0 loss to Liverpool, but that can't be said for most of his... that also can be said, I should say, for most of his teammates. But leading up to the game, it was actually his comments about playing for England that caught a lot of attention. When asked why he said his smile is back playing for England in a recent post, here's what he said.
I've got to be honest, I think I lost my smile a lot after the Euros when it came to playing for England because of, I don't know, I felt like I was a little bit mistreated in comparison to what I contributed. I felt like some of it was a bit harsh on me. I think I felt a bit like the scapegoat. Maybe I was feeling a little bit sorry for myself. I think one of the big criticisms of me was that I didn't speak to the media, I didn't want to do any press conferences, and that was reported in a way that made it sound like I think I'm above it. It's not that at all. I had some personal things going on where journalists had gone to go and see members of my family whilst I was at the tournament. Went to visit my grandparents, and it's something I've kept to myself. And I don't think that's fair. I think that crosses the line of respect.
I mean, of course, he makes a valid point there about crossing the line and what journalists should be doing in terms of stories, and if they're going to go and visit family for reasons that we're still unknown. You can understand why he's raising that as a potential issue. But was he a scapegoat? Do you think he was made a scapegoat? Was he harshly treated?
Well, first of all, I think England did really well to get to the final. Notwithstanding the performances weren't great, but they showed a lot of, character and resilience to get to the final, and he was a big part of that. I think the players these days are a little bit precious, not in terms of, because I didn't think the media were necessarily unkind when we played. The media could have been, but I think a lot of it has to do with social media. Now, we didn't have that when we were playing. So as much as you could get criticism from the press or the media, we didn't have social media whereby the public are criticizing you. So I think that had a lot to do with it. I'm not on social media and I don't look at the press that much. But from what I saw, I don't think he necessarily came in for criticism, maybe for one or two things. But I think that everything around England since Gareth has been there has been so positive that as soon as maybe you get a little bit of, you kind of overemphasize how bad you think the criticism is, because he's not been used to that. But I don't recall that much criticism about him.
No, see, he set a very high standard in Qatar, didn't he? Jude Bellingham played really well. Okay, so you get heaped all the praise and you're the best thing since sliced bread. He had that, and then didn't do quite as well. But I wouldn't say Jude played poorly. He didn't play poorly in the Euros at all. And I think it's difficult because, like John said, social media is a really tough one. We had newspapers and we'd have someone give us a mark out of 10 on a Monday morning, and we might read a piece and the lads would take the mickey saying, oh, he'd give you a 5, you were 12. But that was about as much as we got. But there was some harsh criticism for the terraces at that time, way more than I would have said that is in the modern game. John played with Chrissy Waddle and, two of the best wingers that England have ever had in John and Chrissy Waddle. And Chris was incredible for Marseille.
And Tottenham.
And Tottenham, Newcastle, and like John was doing the same with Liverpool. And
I think the difference back then, though, Cass, is because if you look at England versus Ireland, it was accepted that Ireland are going to play a particular way. They're not going to have any flair in the team. They're just going to attack and fight, and that's what was expected. That's Jack is. Yeah. Now, for England, that's how English football was. That was it about. It was not necessarily about technical ability. It was about fighting and, Peter Reid in midfield. I mean, Glenn, one of my favourite players, was never appreciated. But we still expected our flair players in England to do that. So Ireland never got criticism for the way they played. But when the flair players for England didn't do it, we got criticised.
And the DNA in Irish sport is hurling, Gaelic,
aggression,
rugby, and no, but it is that that you take them on physically as well. And England could do that; they could match. But you're right. There's a certain element of the very best technical players would always suffer more than the energetic ones.
Yeah. But I suppose of all the players, it was Harry Kane that got most of the criticism from the Euros because he wasn't performing to the level we expected. We all think there may have been an injury. He had a back injury, didn't he, for Bayern Munich, and didn't play a few games at the end of last season. So maybe he was still carrying that. But looking forward, we're going to have Thomas Tuchel now in charge. He officially starts in January. What do you make of that appointment?
Very interesting, because I think if you look at what Gareth has done, Gareth has massaged the players' egos. He has just allowed them to play. Yes, he's kind of organised them, but he's not really made any difficult decisions. And there are times which, people have criticised him for when you have to make a harsh decision, like taking off Harry Kane or to do something or to shout at someone or to scream at someone. He doesn't do that, and we've got to the final. We've done really well. We know what Thomas Tuchel's like. Are the players going to respond as much as tactically he's going to be great? could upset people as he's done wherever he's been. And are English players going to respond to his style? Is he going to be allowed to manage in the way that he wants to manage, or just allow them to play like which is what Gareth has done? To go that step further, I think you need to have that strength and that discipline and that ability to shout at players or to do something. Whereas, do the English players now, after being with Gareth for so long, will they respond to that? Because as Jude Bellingham's complaining about a bit of criticism, Thomas Tuchel may be shouting at him at the side of the pitch and doing whatever. So I know he'll be a great tactician. As to whether his man management style is going to suit the English team, or whether he will temper that and change that, which I can't see him doing, is going to be very interesting.
But that's one of the things that Harry Kane has spoken about the culture that Gareth Southgate changed within the England setup and how it's important to keep that going, which is going to be difficult because it's a new man in charge. He has his own way of dealing with things. And we saw in the last international break, of course, there were about 8-9 players that withdrew, and Harry Kane again was quite vocal about not being happy about some of those withdrawals. He didn't quite allude to who, but I think he felt as though some of them perhaps could have still stayed and played a part in the England setup. I mean, that is some of the stuff that Thomas Tuchel has to keep going, doesn't he? Make sure that players want to play for England, want to be a part of the camp, like Gareth Southgate.
And I think they do. Of course, they may have pulled out for whatever reason, but I think they're part of it. But more importantly, Thomas Tuchel has to be himself. You know, when Arne Slot came, and even some of my friends even now, having done what we've done, they said, well, I want to see him a bit more, intense like Jurgen. I said, no, you have to be who you are. So Thomas Tuchel can't come and fit into what England wants.
Sure.
England has to, if they're going to appoint him, they're going to say, we're going to take him, so we have to fit into what he wants to do. Yes. And the players have to do that. They're not going to be saying, well, this is what Gareth did. Gareth wouldn't have done that, which is what the Liverpool players could have done, which is what players that, after Alex Ferguson left. So you either take him and say, whatever you want to do, you do, and the players have to buy into that, or you don't take him.
See, England are not going to have to worry about qualifying in competitions. I think it's all about if they can get their best players to a major tournament, they'll always have a chance. There's never been a lack of quality within the England squad, ever. There's been a luxury of anything where you'll have a number of players. John, probably, if you said name a midfield of England in the 1980s or into the 90s, John, you could probably say, well, had half a dozen top midfielders.
But once again, getting the balance right, because of course, I think that what Gareth did is his solution to a problem is to put on a better player or equally good player. So put on Cole Palmer. Put on Ollie Watkins rather than looking at the way they played. Because what Thomas Tuchel could do is look to fit, like what Spain has done, fit the players into a system, which means that there may not be a room for Cole Palmer. They might have a room for Phil Foden or both.
And that's called tough choices.
And then all of a sudden, are the players going to accept that? Are the fans going to accept that? Are the press going to accept that?
Yeah.
Because if it goes wrong, that's the reason why.
Yeah, and I think that Gareth has always got away with it, because even if it went wrong, well, I played the best players. I had Cole Palmer, I had Phil Foden, I had Jude, and then all on the field. You can't blame me because all the best players are there. Whereas I don't think Thomas Tuchel will do that. But then if it doesn't work, you leave yourself home to a lot of criticism.
Well, we saw that with the Carsley experiment in the Greece game when he didn't even have a number 9, did he? And he tried to fit as many as the good players into that 11, and it didn't.
And the second
work.
game he didn't, and look how well it went.
Yeah, exactly.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.